WestJet Pilots and other podcast listeners, and welcome to this edition number 40 of the WestJet Pilots podcast. I'm your host today. My name is Captain Desmond Jordan, and we are joined once again in the sound booth by our illustrious MEC chair, Captain Bern Lewall. Bern, how are things going today?
Hey, Des. Good, and it's nice to see you in person.
And we also have the privilege today of being joined by our Pilot Training Committee Chair, Gerry Erlam, pilot number 1 at WestJet. How are you, Gerry?
Really good, Des. Thanks for having me.
And I would be remiss if I did not mention the Wizard of Sound who joins us on every occasion, Captain Chris Von Jones. Okay, so today we have a number of issues that we would like to touch on. It's been a little bit of a busy time within the MEC at WestJet. As our members are probably well aware of, there have been some resignations from the negotiations committee, and we are now in the process of reconstituting that committee. Bernie, can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, so as you know, Des, mid-February there, the negotiating committee resigned from their positions, and that was Joel Laudenschlager and Tracy Law. I've worked with them closely over the last 2.5 years. Really value their input, was sorry to see them go, but they just felt they were at a point where their vision of the direction of the negotiating committee didn't align with the MEC's vision.
Okay, so what will next steps be in the reconstitution of that committee?
Well, thankfully, Des, you were able to step into the breach there and provide some continuity between their resignations and when we anticipate having elections for the position in the near future. Mm-hmm. So with that, we have started the interview process. And over the last 2 weeks, we've interviewed around 8 candidates, really well-qualified candidates. The recommendations out of those interviews will be coming to the MEC on Friday, April the 25th, where the MEC will elect the 3 permanent members and maybe up to 2 alternate members of the negotiating team.
All right. So along with those vacancies that will be filled, we also have to fill the position of vice chair. Is that correct?
Yes, Des. Shortly after the negotiating committee resigned, Chris Thal also put his resignation in. Thankfully, he gave us 6 weeks' notice and actually resigned effective April 7th. So now we're in a position where we're currently looking for another vice chair, and that vice chair election will be as well on April 25th. To that, we have four candidates that have put their names forward to the body, and I'm really excited to see where this goes. I would be remiss if I did not thank Chris for the last 2.5 years of collaboration. We worked really well all through CA2 negotiations, and after that through the merge with Sunwing, and right until the end. I certainly appreciated his help and his enthusiasm. I think he was really great at building unity within the group and also running the committees, which is primarily the vice chair's role within the association.
Yeah, I would have to second that and back that up even further. Whoever steps into that role will have some big shoes to fill. I worked with Chris from the very beginning when he was a P2P member and moved his ways up through the ranks through Grievance and other places. I've seen the two of you work together, and I've seen the two of you move this association forward in leaps and bounds. His input on this association, for the time being, I think will be missed. But I would hope to see him bring his talents back to our organization at some point in the future. So I certainly will miss his presence within the association for the time being also.
I think one thing this brings up, Des, is these roles are all-encompassing roles. They're very difficult to step back from for even a short break. And with that, I have appointed an executive administrator to help out the MEC going into the future.
Okay, Bernie, that's very important. I think that the pilot group would like to know, what exactly is an executive administrator? What's involved in that role? And why have we decided now to move in that direction?
So the executive administrator position, otherwise known as the EA position, is something that most larger MECs within the ALPA structure have. And we've gotten to the point where we're now 22 to 2,300 pilots after the final integration with Sunwing. We're at a point where our bandwidth is only so large, and we need that fourth member in the within the MEC officer structure to help us out. So primarily, he'll be there to help me shed some of my duties onto him, but he'll also be there to assist our Secretary-Treasurer Vignesh, and as well as whomever is elected to the Vice Chair position.
Yeah, without a doubt, our group has grown, and the area of responsibilities that the MEC has also grown with it. So I think it's a wonderful idea that we are expanding the brain trust within the MEC, and we do have that capacity to offload or share off some of these larger projects that we're dealing with, and even on a day of basis, an ongoing basis.
So the plan was always to get an EA to help manage the workload going into CA3 negotiations.
Okay, so with that in mind, I'll ask you a few questions. So what would the criteria be to be an EA? Who chooses who that EA would be? And who have you chosen to be that EA?
So number one, the criteria for who would be an EA, it's someone I need to be able to trust and work very closely with, and who's a good communicator that can communicate with me as well as the rest of the MEC. How does it come about? As the MEC chair, I appoint the EA, and then at the next regular meeting of the MEC, it gets confirmed. And who did I pick? I think was the third question.
That was the third question.
And that's Captain Peter No. He's a Vancouver-based captain. He's been here, I think, 23 years, 22 or 23 years. And he's a great communicator and a great strategist. And I look really forward to actually working with him over the next few months and maybe years.
Right. I can also say that I know Peter No as well, and he's always been the consummate professional, and I think that is a good choice for an EA.
And Bernie, if I might add something as well, I work closely with you, and I see, and with the MEC, and I see how much work you guys put in, and I'm really pleased to see you move forward on this and take on support for the important work that you guys do. And again, I would echo the sentiments that Peter is a great choice for this, so really looking forward to communicating with him and working with him and you as well.
So if you see Peter out there on the line, make sure you shake his hand and say thank you very much for accepting that position as well. Well, we've spent the last little bit of time talking about some of the internal structures of the associations and some of the housekeeping associated with that. I think now we could shift to some of the operational issues that our association is dealing with. And one of the big issues that we see out there right now that is being discussed on the line is the application by WestJet for the Temporary Foreign Workers Program. First off, Bernie, could you just give us a little bit of a background on that program, please?
Yeah, the Temporary Foreign Worker Program is very similar to a visa program they have in the States.
Okay.
It basically allows companies to apply for, and if they're granted the ability to bring in workers that are attached to that company.
Okay.
For instance, so if they get fired by that company or whatever, they have to go back to their they have to leave the country.
Okay. Now, why would they elect to use that program?
So in Encore's case, I think right now they're stuck with a situation where they're 60 captains short. From our viewpoint, that's a wages and working conditions issue.
Okay.
And you're not going to solve it by hiring temporary foreign workers, but regardless, we're absolutely opposed to the temporary foreign worker program to be utilized in the case of professional pilots.
Okay. So what would the risks be associated with them employing that program? Gerry, can you touch on some of that? Safety risks.
Well, first of all, Des, these pilots would have to be vetted by the company and by Transport Canada, and they would have to undergo all the same scrutiny that our pilots would go through in obtaining a Transport Canada ATPL or the equivalent. So the safety risk isn't attached to that. And I think I'll throw this back to Bernie here in a second, where we do have a concern, and it's the same concern that the U.S. carriers have, is that there's a corporate pressure that we as naturalized citizens wouldn't necessarily have. But Bernie, can I turn that over to you to talk about what the union's position on the safety piece is, even though they're completely qualified.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If immigration is tied to the individuals being hired and maintain an employment with the company that brought them over, that puts them in a compromised situation if they're asked to do something that potentially is not safe.
It's almost like there's a sword of Damocles hanging over their heads that if, the potential exists, that if they're put in a situation where it's a matter of either you do this thing at the request of the company or you are at odds with what the company wants to happen, that might leave them in a position where their employment is somewhat at risk, which means their ability to stay within the country is somewhat at risk. And that's a significant pressure to have on any individual.
Yeah, absolutely does. Well, the good news is the company, through pressure applied to them by ALPA Canada, the WestJet MEC, and the WestJet Encore MEC, has confirmed with us that they will not be hiring temporary foreign workers under the current application or under the current approval.
Good news and a wise choice.
Yeah, I agree.
So Bernie, with that, in that last piece there was some mention of the Encore group. Also, in a memo that we recently released, there was some discussion about some potential integration issues with the Encore unit and the mainline group. I'm wondering if you could touch on what your opinions on that might be.
Sure. This was actually brought up by the WestJet and Encore MEC when we had a meeting based on the TFW program with the executives a couple of weeks ago. And I'm glad you said integration and not merger, because I really, personally, I'm not in favor of a merger with Encore. We've just gone through a merger. I don't want to see another one. And integration would be slightly different in that you would actually be integrating the Dash 8s onto the WestJet AOC. And it would be up for negotiation as to the wages, working conditions, etc. But I do want to reiterate, Des, that no integration of the Dash 8s will be considered without ensuring that the interests of the WestJet mainline pilots are protected and advanced.
Okay, Bernie, thank you for that. There are a few other issues that we would like to touch on. The rollout of this Pelesys app that the pilot group has been introduced to. And Gerry, I know that you have some expertise on that too. What is this app?
I would say that the basis of this app is and it's called the Pelesys Flight Log and Recency Tool. It was developed by WestJet to assist our pilot group and training coordinators in maintaining currency and regulatory compliance. That's the basis of this. It has some other fundamental developments and tools that will be very good at assisting our pilots in maintaining standard, in maintaining your qualifications, and in maintaining a logbook, a flight log. So there's a lot of benefits to this, but to your basic question, this is a tool that will assist us in maintaining recency and Transport Canada regulations.
Okay, and why is this coming out now?
Like a few other programs we use at WestJet, things were getting outdated, and this one was a program that it's through CAE. I know that the company did a lot of RFPs for this, and this was the one that we came up with. And as you know, Des, you and Bernie and a few others, we were able to get a demonstration of the program, some of its capabilities. Effectively, the short answer is that we needed a new system. We're running out of time on our other systems. Regulation-wise, there's a few things that we can talk about, but I'd be happy to entertain a few more of your questions if you would like to start there.
Sure. Here's a simple question. What is the benefit to the average line pilot of this application?
Okay, we speak to one of the benefits is we do get a real-time tracking of all of our flight data in terms of takeoffs, landings, ETOPS capability, your currency, and that all happens when, and I guess if I were to take the most basic benefit we get out of this, is that for those of us who maybe have been relying on flight logs to maintain our journey log, or pardon me, our personal logbooks, I would say that maybe we weren't 100% compliant on what's required by cars to do that. And if I were just to take the car requirement that speaks to us right here, it's It's section 401.08 of personal logs. And I'll just give you a couple of things that we're supposed to be maintaining as pilots, and this would include detailed tracking of the flight conditions, whether you were day or night or IFR, assigned duties. Were you the pilot in command? Was it an ETOPS flight for tracking? These are things that we are supposed to be tracking on a daily basis, on a flight log basis. I would suggest that perhaps the flight logs that some of us rely on a monthly basis don't quite encompass all of that information. So there's a good benefit there that as pilots we're supposed to be maintaining these logs as through the CARS requirements.
Okay. Does the company have any requirement to maintain that information as well?
They do. That would live in a slightly different section of CARS. What I've given you is what personal licensing and the personal licensing piece of it is. So what a pilot is required to do. What a company is required to do is a different section of the CARS. But yes, the company has to maintain, obviously to maintain our standard, the company needs to know what we've done. So they are dovetailed, they're integrated together, but we have a personal obligation to maintain a flight log. And I think that's might be right now where some of the sticky point is coming for our pilots.
Okay. Yeah, one of the concerns that I hear from pilots on the line with regards to this app is that there's a feeling like they are being forced into having to do this within a specific period of time.
I can see why they might think that, Des, but I would say that there is no forced period of time. And I need to be careful how we frame this because the pilot does not have to do that right at the end of the flight. We know there's some connectivity issues. If there were no connectivity issues, I would tell you that this task can be completed in 30 seconds to a minute and a half. However, we recognize that with the connectivity issues that this has been taking up just based on some of the data we're getting back upwards of 5 minutes. If that were the case, I can tell you confidently that you can step away from that procedure at some point in the near future, move to when you're at your hotel room at another gate, somewhere where you have a good connectivity. You can continue to fill out your flight log, and it should take you 30 to 90 seconds. So my take on it would be if you're struggling to do this, close the app up, wait till you get to a place where you've got good connectivity, and this should not be a problem.
Okay, so an extension of the concern that I've heard is that, a guy's at the end of his flight, he's looking to go and catch a commuting flight, he's moving off to make a connecting flight, he's got his wife waiting to pick him up. And he's like, man, I'm stuck here, I've got to do this report, and things aren't working. So would it be fair to say that there's a time period, be it 24, 48 hours, so long as that report is completed within a reasonable period of time, that obligation is met?
Yes, absolutely, Des. If the connectivity piece is not working or there's some other extenuating circumstance, absolutely. Hop in the car, get home, do this at some other point. I would say there are a few outlier circumstances where you could run into a currency issue. Let's say your ETOPS was expiring at the end of the month and this is an end of the month flight. The second that you were to fill in this flight log, all of a sudden your currency is extended. But if you've taken the time to go home and you've left it for a few days, you could be NQF, not qualified for the next few days. So there is a good reason to get it done at the gate. Take that 30 to 90 seconds, get it done at the gate if you can. If you can't, by all means, move along.
So, guys, let me just jump in here. I'm enjoying the conversation, but I do have to point out that what's being asked here is kind of akin to procedural creep. Like they're asking us to do more stuff within the same time frame. That's something that I have directed my grievance committee to take a look at and see if there is a case, is there a contractual violation here? Because, this might take 30 seconds or 45 seconds, maybe even 2 minutes, and it doesn't seem like it's a huge deal. But what if they add something else on top of this later? And that's a concern of mine and the MECs.
That's a very good point, Bernie. As with any new initiative, the best way to move forward on it is collaboratively. So I'm hopeful that we will be able to continue conversations with flight operations to implement this in a manner that is acceptable to all the parties.
Really good point, Des. And I would say that with any new software that we take on, and flight operations has had a major undertaking with this Pelesys system through CAE, that will have some stumbling blocks. But with collaboration through the PTC and with flight operations, I think we'll get to the right place.
You know, as chair of P2P, I'm kind of tied into the hot button issues that are out there with the pilot group. And one of those issues that's popping up as of late is the new CIFO designation for some of our pilots. It's great that we have you here today, Gerry, to speak to that. Could you give us some information and background on that and where we are at with that?
Great question, Des. I think, first of all, let's talk about the IFO, which is Initial First Officer. We've always had this code. It's found in if you want to reference it, it's in the pilot training manual. Nothing really changes here. The code has always been there, so that for a few reasons, but one is that if you see a new captain and a new first officer on the same flight plan, that would be an IC and an IFO, and that designation would not be permitted to fly together. So there is a check and balance there for all crew. Now, when we talk about the CIFO, which is a commercial license, Initial First Officer, this was a new code that was designated to account for the fact that we've always been an ATPL carrier. Now we're bringing on pilots that have a commercial license. So they will keep that code right up until they have 1,500 hours. They will not be able to fly with a new captain, an IC designation. And this code will allow our captains to understand who they're flying with, allow them to work with some of the complexities around the human factors piece of this, or the CRM piece, where they can provide support to the new pilots. So I like the code. I think it gives our captains a little bit more clarity on the challenges that they may be facing. One of the big pieces, of course, is that these pilots have not necessarily worked in the same theater of operation that at Sunwing that they may have worked, that they may find themselves in here at WestJet. So it gives our captains an opportunity to reach out to these pilots when they get in the flight deck, a great briefing about what they may or may not want to do, the legs they may or may not want to fly. Information is key here, and it's going to help. I think it'll be good for our captains to have this information.
Very good and useful information, Gerry. Thank you very much for that. The last thing that we'd like to touch on today, and another concern that I often hear about, especially with people out in Toronto, is gaining an understanding of the differences between a reduction bid versus a rebid and how that's going to affect our pilot group. Bernie, what information can you give us on that?
I've been hearing a lot of that as well, Des. There seems to be some confusion out online. Is this going to be a reduction bid, or is this going to be a rebid? And to be clear, it's going to be a reduction bid. Now, there's a difference between the two. A rebid would be they put all the positions out there, and every pilot gets to bid on a position, and if your seniority can hold it, you get it. So that is not what is going on here.
Just to be clear, this is going to be a reduction bid without layoff. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And that is 7-11 of the contract if you want to go through and read through it. But in a nutshell, what will be occurring in this case is everyone will have the opportunity to fill out two bids. One will be for a vacancy bid, and then one will be for the actual reduction bid. Now, the way it will work in process is the vacancy bid will be filled out first. So what we are expecting is that Toronto is going to be reduced and Calgary and Vancouver is going to be increased in size for both FOs and captains. So the first bid, again, is going to be a vacancy bid. It will fill any vacancies that are posted. So let's say there's 20 captain, 20 FO positions in Calgary, 20 captain positions, 20 FO positions in Vancouver. Those will be filled via vacancy bid. And then once that's done, and again, this is going to be seamless, no one's going to see two different bids. All we're going to see is the end result. The second part of that bid is the reduction bid. And assuming it's going to be Toronto that's being reduced, if they are reduced by, say, 40 positions, those positions that are reduced will be able to bump anywhere in the system that their seniority can hold. So as a captain that is bumped out of Toronto, if your seniority can hold another captain position somewhere else in the system and you bid it, you will get that and bump that pilot, the bottom pilot in whichever base you're bumping into. That pilot will now be reduced out of that base. So it behooves everyone to fill out the reduction bid. If you want to move to Calgary or Vancouver and you're not already there, then it would behoove you to fill out the vacancy bid as well.
Question, Bernie. If the vacancy bid was subscribed properly, would there be a need for a reduction bid? Would the Toronto, let's say that the Toronto pilots bid into the vacancy, is there now a need for that reduction bid?
There would be, because the only way you can, because as you know, vacancies are filled via seniority. So I don't see a case where only those captains and FOs in Toronto that are going to reduce are going to bid on the vacancies. I see a bunch of senior FOs bidding on captain positions in Calgary and Vancouver. And if those senior FOs are senior to the junior captain in Toronto, it's all seniority based. They will get it. Does that make sense?
There's a lot of moving parts there.
There is. But basically, again, vacancies will be posted on this bid, and we're expecting it to come out late May, early June. There will be vacancies announced. That will be actioned first prior to the reduction bid. But again, this, from a line pilot point of view, this is all happening at once. Like, you're not going to see the results of the vacancy bid, then have a couple days, and then the results of the reduction bid. You're going to see the results of the whole bid.
Okay. So as you can tell, there are a lot of moving parts there and a lot of information. So I would suggest to us as a pilot group, familiarize yourselves with Section 711 of our contract. Take the time to compile your questions. More information regarding the numbers of the bid should be coming out late May to early June. And of course, as we get more information, we will ensure that you stay informed. But yeah, feel free to shoot us a dart, and we will use that information to compile further future podcasts and future communications. Well, with that, it's been a bit of a day here in the recording studio. I'd like to thank our guests, specifically Gerry Erlam. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Des.
Thanks, Gerry.
And of course,
Thank you,
Bern,
Bernie.
always thank you very much for making the time and helping to keep our pilots informed.
And thank you, Des.
I appreciate that. With that, we'll just wrap it up, and I will say to our pilot groups, make sure that you stay informed, read your communications, wear your lanyards, but most importantly, stay safe. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of PIREP, the WestJet Pilots podcast.